Could you tell us more about some of the other concepts that Silent Hill borrowed from Carl Jung?
Okay, well, I think the most sort of the one that really turned me on to wanting to analyze Silent Hill a lot more deeply was this concept of synchronicity. It's a concept that I tend to be quite enamored with to this day, even ever after I first discovered it. Carl Jung believed that there was this inherent link between the physical world and the mental world.
Mm.
And that link was that the mental was in part material, was in part physical, and the physical was in part mental. And this sort of draws upon a lot of Eastern religious ideas, particularly in Buddhism and Hinduism. Um, so, and like one of my favorite quotes that he ever said was one that he had at the end of his textbook called Ion. He said that I, I'm paraphrasing, but he says that the material world has to be in part psyche, because how else could matter produce psyche? And the psyche has to be in part material, because how else could psyche move matter, right? So that's sort of one of the fundamental aspects of what synchronicity is. Now, the other aspect of synchronicity is sort of how, well, the first aspect was sort of a characteristic, but the
Mm.
second aspect, I'll sort of give you an example of how synchronicity works. Have you ever had a dream and then some point in reality you felt like you seen what you're looking at in a dream? Sort of like deja vu.
Yeah.
That's sort of what synchronicity is. And I'll give you a famous example, one that I actually gave in one of my Silent Hill videos of synchronicity happening
Mm.
to Carl Jung and one of his patients. Jung was talking to one of his patients that was in a deep neurosis that she couldn't get out of. And so they were doing dream analysis to try and help her out of it. The patient tells Jung about this dream that she had of a golden scarab. Somebody giving her a piece of jewelry that looks like a golden scarab. And then during that very same session, there is this tapping at Carl Jung's cabinet door. He goes over to see what it is, and he sees it's a bug. He catches it, sees what it is, walks over to his patient and says, "Well, here, I found your golden scarab." And it was a golden scarab. Now, keep in mind that golden scarabs, they're very, let's say, rare to show up in an Austrian climate, let's say.
Mm.
So that's an example of something from one person's mind possibly showing up in physical reality. And so you see that, again, that same principle applied in games like Silent Hill, where you see the products of one's mind take physical form. And then I'll go beyond that. You know how we were just talking about Alan Wake and how
Yeah.
that game does the same thing. Well, there's another game that shares the same universe as Alan Wake. It's a game called Control. It's a game that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, made by the same developers. And in the game Control, it sort of takes place inside this giant facility that deals with the paranormal. And there's one sort of part of the facility you can go into called the Synchronicity Lab. And in several different documents in the game, you see references to Jung's theories, including synchronicity. And again, it deals with that idea that the products of one's mind can come to life.
Mm.
You see that in Death Stranding. See that in Final Fantasy X. It's a very famous idea, and it makes you think just what there is about the nature of reality that you don't understand, because there seems to be so much truth to it, and everybody seems to have experienced synchronicity in one way or another, even if they don't believe in it. And I think it's that theory that drove a lot of people to my analysis of Silent Hill in the first place.
Yep.
So that's one example. Yeah.
Mm.